Irish fairy tales are now available at irishfairytales.com. We create beautiful keepsake kids' costumes and enchanting tales to spark little ones' imagination. Each book is sprinkled with cúpla so that parents and children can learn a couple of words in Irish together, and don't worry, they're written phonetically for those that need it, like me. These are gorgeously illustrated books and each have a message of bravery and compassion, and you can choose from either the mermaid version or the dragon version, or if you've two little ones you can get both and the stories mirror each other. And once you've read the story together, your little one can dress up in their beautiful, wipe clean tale that are designed to be safe and sensory friendly, and off they go on their adventures. irishfairytales.com. Hello, I'm Stef McSherry and this is the Mum Mind podcast, and it's actually the last in the series for this season. We always take a break for the summer. I have to say I'm really looking forward to the change of pace over the summer holidays. I'm not saying it's any more calm, but definitely just the change of pace I quite enjoy. I hope you are looking forward to some different time, maybe some time away over the summer as well. And for our last episode, I thought we'd do something a little bit different. So we are talking to award-winning author Sinéad Moriarty today. So she would be known for very contemporary family dramas, but she's also got out some beautiful children's books. And there's a new one just out called Saving Grace. And these books are really a little bit different because they always have some kind of message in there. And actually, since talking to Sinead, I've ordered some of these for my kids over the summer. There's The New Girl, there's Fixing Mum and Dad, The Truth About Riley, and they tackle subjects such as climate change, divorcing parents, refugee, and Saving Grace is about a little girl that suffers some burns to her ear and the side of her face at a Halloween party. So again, tackling something a little bit different for a children's book. So really, really enjoyed this chat with Sinead. I hope you enjoy it too. Good morning, Sinead. Lovely to have you here this morning. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be on the show.
So you have a lovely way of writing about subject matters that would be perhaps deemed a little difficult for kind of teenagers or young adults, let me say. So this one is no different. Saving Grace.
Yeah.
About a little girl that suffers burns from the ear to the side of her face and how she
Yeah.
navigates life after that. How did you come up with this story? Was it inspired by something? What made you go there?
Yeah. Well, when I decided to write for children, I've written for adults for 20 years. I decided to write for kids about 7 years ago. The reason was because I was watching the news, and it was at the time when the war in Syria was kind of at its height, and my kids were much younger, and they were watching the news, and they were talking about this boat that had sunk, and the women and children, and the life jackets were false, and they couldn't swim. And my kids went, "Oh God, why would you get in a boat if you can't swim?" And I said, okay, they don't understand it. They don't
Mm,
understand what it's like to be desperate. They don't understand what it's like to be a refugee, to have to leave your country, to have no choice. So I decided I wanted to write a book about this to kind of teach children what it's like. And for me, the way I write is very much kind of education by stealth. So I've written about like refugees, homelessness, climate change, grief. I've written about divorce, and now I've written about kind of what is beauty. Saving Grace really is about what is beauty, but I think if you create a lovely story, warm, hopeful, but very realistic story around a serious theme, children are well able to digest it. And my books are aimed at 8 to 12-year-olds, and you'd be amazed what they are soaking in just
mm.
via whether they have phones or siblings have phones or just in the schoolyard. And if you think about it, back in the day, some of the books that we read as children had very dark themes. I mean,
Yeah,
look at Hansel and Gretel, for example. But and Cinderella, they're all quite dark. But if
yeah.
you create a very warm story around it, they're well able. And I always end my books with hope because I think it's very important for children to have hope. And then on the question of theme, um, the first couple of books I wrote because I wanted to write about refugees and homelessness, and climate change. And then I go around schools and libraries, and I always say to kids, what would you like to read about? what's on your mind? What are your concerns? What do you think would be good? And quite a few children said divorce. So I wrote fixing mum and dad. And then quite a few children said kind of being pretty, not thinking you're pretty, wanting to be pretty. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do something around the theme of kind of, an aesthetically pretty child whose prettiness, inverted commas, is taken away, and then she realizes at the end of the book that beauty comes from within.
Yeah, amazing. And I was, when I kind of first saw the theme, I thought of Katie Piper. Do you know the
Mm,
lady?
yeah.
There was an acid attack, and
Mm,
again, she was historically beautiful. She was a model, wannabe TV presenter, and then I think it was an ex-partner orchestrated an acid attack, which completely disfigured her. And she was recently on Davina McCall's podcast and talked about not only her journey, but her mum and dad's journey and how difficult that was and the treatment they had to put her through. And there was one really vivid scene. I'm digressing slightly from your book, but just
no,
just
no, it's
that
not. It's the same theme.
the
Yeah.
imagery of it. She was on about that whatever ointments they had to put on her skin, they'd put like an audiobook or something on to distract her from the pain of it. And she'd be led there. Oh, it's going to make me cry just saying it. She was led there, and the
Yeah.
mum and dads had to put the ointment on, and she'd feel these kind of splashes of water, which she thought she was like, "Oh, is something dripping?" Of course, it was her parents crying, and
Oh God.
they tag team going out of the room so that they could just get themselves together and go again. Oh my God, sorry,
God.
it just
No, but
really
it
moved
is.
me.
I know, because there's nothing worse than seeing your child in pain. I think that's
Yeah.
every parent's nightmare, because you would gladly take the pain yourself.
Yes.
And actually, that is one of the themes in the book, because the parents are really struggle
Yeah.
with her burns, with her, and she's not terribly disfigured. It's just it's the side of her face, but they really struggle with that. And it's also about how it happens at a Halloween party, and there's this kind of group of neighborhood friends, and there's blame about the bonfire, and
Yes.
they shouldn't have had the bonfire, and who was responsible and who wasn't responsible, and you have to look after your own children, and there's a lot of
Oh,
blame involved, and that really affects the kids as well, because the parents aren't speaking to each other. So it's just everything that goes with it. And also, I think I kind of wanted to explore friendship, and Grace is a bit tricky after it happens, because she's obviously traumatized and really
yes.
upset, and she can't look at herself in the mirror, and her friends find her quite are trying to figure out how to be friends to her, because she is being kind of tricky. And it's about that. It's about her journey, but also her friends kind of trying to manage her and be the best friends they can be, but they also have stuff going on in their own lives. And it's
Mm,
all about that as well. So it's life really, in all its messiness. But yes, there's lots of themes in there, but I think girls and boys, I suppose probably a little more girls, are very aware from a very young age of what is considered pretty. And in the book, Grace has always been told, "Oh, you're so pretty. Oh, you're so pretty," which is probably something we should not really say to people.
yes.
But we do. And that's just life. And in the schoolyard, people will say it to you. And then suddenly that has been taken away from her. And suddenly she goes, "Well, what am I? Like,
Yeah.
who am I?" And she kind of has to figure it all out for herself. But yeah, so I think again, it's a serious theme, but there's always fun in the books. There's always funny characters and fun times, um, while also dealing with yeah, all the themes that go with.
Yeah, and I think probably with social media, our girls are more and more aware of being pretty and putting
Mm,
themselves out there and sharing images of themselves being dolled up and looking nice, and then all the lovely feedback that they get. And what are they without that? And I find
mm,
it's funny, I've just recorded an episode about eating disorders, and we were talking about the language that we use. And maybe
mm,
our generation and younger are becoming more and more aware of not going straight to "you're pretty" or "look how gorgeous you
mm.
are," but perhaps talking about "you've beautiful eyes" and "you're so kind," kind of
Yeah.
the whole thing, rather than we were talking about kind of back in the day where, parents or relatives, "Oh, should you be wearing that? I don't think you've got the figure to carry that off," or, you know, even saying, "Oh, isn't she lovely and curvy," and things like that. Just all this commentary, constant commentary, really, on our children.
Or blunter, you need to lose weight.
Oh
You
God,
you
yes.
put on weight. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember. an older friend of my grandmother's telling, being very blunt and in no way complimentary. And those things do stick with you, So I think you do have to be careful. And you're right, we shouldn't focus on aesthetics. It should be like, you're clever, you're funny, you're kind, you're compassionate, all those kind of things as well. It's also lovely to say you've got lovely hair or,
Yes.
fabulous smile. But yeah, and I think you know, I mean, I've got teenagers like they are bombarded, and it is all about how you look. And no matter what we do, it will always a little bit be thus. So we have to
Yes.
kind of manage that, I think, and we have to teach our girls to be strong and to focus on, not just the outside but the inside, because that's really, really important. And that is what um is what the book is about, really. It's
Yeah.
about, beauty from within and friendships and family and the importance of all those things in your life when you are experiencing trauma.
Yeah. And the boys too, because I have a 12-year-old boy, and he's not yet on social media. He's just got a phone, and we're just navigating that first bit of social media, which I just am finding so difficult
Yeah.
because I've got a teenage girl that's already been through that. But he's already talking about, can I join the gym? Can I
I know,
can I go?
12. You're not even
I know.
developed. Yeah.
Yeah. Which
Yeah, yeah.
it's this all. I had David Coleman on here talking about this looks maxing, this
Yeah.
this very aesthetic world where we're kind of putting them in. So I think it's a really interesting topic, and definitely one my son is an avid book reader, so this is definitely one he'd love.
Oh, well, that is amazing that he's a reader, because a lot of them aren't. It's great.
Oh, he's just about to finish national school, and I this is a whole different subject matter, but he loves writing. And I asked him to write 3 cards, one for his teacher, one for his SET teacher, and one for the principal. And I just said, you're finishing national school, so it'd be nice to write something. Well,
Yeah,
honest to God, Sinead, if you had seen I'll read it to you after the podcast, because
I'd
I
love to.
I burst out crying, and he was like, "Are you crying because it's bad?" And I said, "No, I'm crying
Oh,
because it's so beautiful." Like
oh,
I said,
wow.
but he doesn't see this as a gift yet, because it's
Yeah,
not the hero of the soccer team or the kid that plays electric
yeah.
guitar. And I keep saying to him, this really is a gift. This is a
Oh,
gift.
wow.
The fact that you can use words like this to move somebody is just
That's amazing.
phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah,
How did
that's
you start
amazing.
writing? Were you a reader and a writer at school?
Yeah, yeah. I grew up in a family falling down with books. My mom wrote books for kids, actually.
Oh, wow.
She wrote kind of short biographies for teenagers about Irish historical figures like
Oh,
Joyce and
amazing.
Yeats and Ronnie Whale. Yeah.
Lovely.
She wrote them with her friends. She just decided that, teenagers didn't know enough about like really key important historical figures
Yeah.
in Irish history. So I guess so that was obviously very inspiring. And then I always loved English and I read a huge amount. And I always secretly wanted to be a writer, but I didn't really have the confidence or I guess the themes until I turned 30 and I wrote my first book, which was about called The Baby Trail. It was about a couple struggling with infertility, because I was struggling with infertility, and I made it funny. And that started me off on this journey. Now I had written 2 previous books that had failed miserably, so it was my third book that got published.
So had you gone on any writing courses, or had you been
Yeah,
secretly scribbling away
yeah.
before
So I was
that?
secretly scribbling away, and then after the 2 first books got rejected, I mean, I sent them everywhere. They were rejected by everybody. I went, okay, I need help and
Okay.
guidance. And so I joined a creative writing group. I was living in London. I joined a creative writing group, just a bog standard, went up the road. And at the time, in parallel in my life, I was having fertility treatment and I was really, really struggling. Everyone seemed to be getting pregnant on their honeymoons. And I was really struggling. I felt really alone and isolated. And I just thought, I'm going to write about this and I'm going to make it funny, because I would tell funny stories to my husband when I came back and try and laugh it off. And yeah, so that was The Baby Trail, and that was just it was the right timing. It kind of hit a nerve. It was
Mm,
just around the time people were beginning to talk about infertility in a much more broad manner, and it was less sort of like shameful and secret. And I think that's really important. And people are
yeah.
so open about it now. But yeah, so that was my first book. So that's kind of how I got started, and then just took off from there. but my kids always wanted me to write for kids, but it had to be the right theme, had to be the right time.
Yeah.
I always wanted to write, you know, important subjects, but that so the kid doesn't feel like they're learning. It's not a heaviness, but they're actually, I want them to think about things in a very
Yeah, there's an
engaging manner.
awareness that is
Yeah,
coming, a life awareness, if you like.
yeah,
And
yeah.
have all of your books always had kind of a theme that's either personal to you or that has moved you in the world?
Yeah, I think like all my adult novels I did the same. They all have kind of everything starts for me with the theme or an idea or an issue, and then I kind of try and figure out, can I actually, kind of create enough of a story around this for it to be a book and for it to be good enough. So usually I do a lot of research. I actually did a lot of research into Burns for this book, a huge amount. And I really enjoyed that as well. Like when I wrote The New Girl, my first kids' books, which was about Syrian refugee, like I contacted the
Yes.
Refugee Council of Ireland and they put me in touch with this incredible Syrian family. And Sarah was 17 when I met her. She was the one who spoke to me because her English was quite good. And she's become a really important person in my life.
Mm.
She came here at 17, very little, well, her English was okay. And I went to her graduation there in, I think it was October, and she
Oh,
graduated from pharmaceutical science. And I cried the whole way through because
I bet.
I know how much she suffered, and I know what it took for her to achieve that. And subsequent to coming to Ireland, lots of things have gone wrong for her as well. And it was so phenomenal, and I was so proud. It was really a very special moment. So I have gained a lot
Yeah.
from writing in my life. I've met the most amazing people, but she's very special to me.
And don't you
And
think people would have a very different opinion of refugees if they knew their stories?
mm,
Do you
yeah,
know?
absolutely.
If they didn't think of them as just, well, I mean, it's such a weird world at the moment because it seems to be a hot topic. And I just think we forget these are people that have, like you said at the beginning, getting into a boat with your family when you know you can't swim. I mean,
Mm,
Jesus, the desperation.
yeah, yeah, and that's what it is. It's desperation, and that's what
Yeah.
people forget. Um, So yeah, and I mean, she would say that there were a lot of people that she met in the detention center in Mosney who had been there for years and they're not
Mm.
given papers to work. So they're just kind of sitting
Existing.
there in this
Yeah.
horrendous limbo. So like if you treat people like that, you're not going to get the best from them. So anyway, they were lucky enough that they got refugee status quite early. So amazing things have happened to me through writing. I've met the most incredible people. I love research. I find it really fascinating. Sometimes I have to stop myself because I get too into it. And, at the end of the day, you really only use 5% of what you research, but it's the confidence that the broad knowledge of your
Yes.
topic gives you to write about. And I mean, there was a lot of talk a while ago about, appropriation. And I firmly believe that if you are responsible in your research, if you are thorough, I think you can write about anything.
Of
So,
course. Like that's,
yeah,
isn't that the whole point of writing?
that kind
That,
of is the whole point.
it's
Yeah,
imagination based. Like this is,
yeah,
you're not writing an historical depiction. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to be,
yeah.
yeah, it's, yeah.
It's about responsible research, in my opinion.
Yes, fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough. So these are all your books aimed for kind of between 10 and 14, the teenage young adult ones.
it's kind of. I mean, from eight, really. Like a lot of kids are reading from eight. It's more 8 to 12.
Okay.
So they're kind of like middle. They call middle grade. I mean, in America, would be middle grade. So it's kind of like, yeah, that sort of, yeah. So it's still in primary school, really, kind
Yeah,
of
kind
end of
of.
primary school.
Yes, I was just
I mean,
going to
it's
say
really
fifth.
from second to sixth class, really. I mean,
Yeah,
a lot of 7 and 8 year olds read them as well because they're gentle, but then 13-year olds enjoy them as well. So that's kind of the beauty of it, I think. And actually, it's been lovely because a lot of parents have got in touch with me to say that their kids are reluctant readers and they've loved them. So that's really nice because
oh, that's lovely.
I try and suck you in from the first page, and I think that's the key. I know myself. I mean, I had 3 kids. They were great readers, and then they got phones. Anyway, we won't talk about that. But I know I saw them with books. Like you have to be sucked in quickly.
Yes,
As,
and
as with adults, yeah, it's the same.
yeah, and I've a 14-year-old that's been the same as you've just described, was a reader. I
Mhm.
think probably through the pressure of kind of first and second year where there's a lot of reading that they have to do has kind of fallen out with love.
Yes.
Fallen out with the love of reading. But I'm desperately looking for something that will suck her in over the summer, so that when we're kind of down on a beach or whatever, that she can just pick
Yeah.
something up. So this is giving me great hope.
Yeah.
I'm
And
going to
also,
put it in her hands.
yeah, they want something easy to get them back into it,
Yeah,
you
and that
know.
we're not kind of
Yeah.
aiming for something too challenging or serious. Like I love the fact that you're using humor to talk about these difficult subjects.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
No, very much so.
Um, the part about the guilt with the parents, I think, is really
Mm.
interesting as well. Only at the weekend we were at like a sports club barbecue, and somebody told me a story of them going away camping, because I was paranoid. There were younger kids there, and I kept saying, "Oh, don't let them near the
Yeah.
fire, don't let them near the fire." And then one of the mums told me a story of exactly that, where they were at a barbecue. They'd all gone away camping. There was like a fire pit, and a toddler put his arm into the fire
Oh,
pit, but they
oh
were
God.
miles away from anywhere. The
Oh
adults had all
God.
been drinking. Now, thankfully, they had a very decent burn kit with them, so they were able to put this, I can't, like a gel dressing on it until the
Yeah.
morning, till they could then drive him out. But just hearing that, I said, "Oh my God." And I was watching her husband, and he was very much near the fire, making sure nobody went with. And I was thinking, gosh, he must be
Right.
reliving that, because
Yeah.
those moments when, look, we've all, stuff has happened to our kids all the time.
Yeah.
You know, they've fallen off something, or you've turned your eye for a second and they've slipped and banged their head. I remember my husband sending me a photo of my son with like a lovely gash through his eye. You know, he'd
Oh,
been on the flicker with his sister and gone head first off it. You know, all those
oh
moments.
yeah.
So it's
Yeah.
lovely that you explore that side of things as well. What made you want to do that? Like talk about that kind of guilt and the fallout between the families.
Well, I've always thought it was really interesting about, like, accidents or things happening in somebody else's house. And, you
Mm,
know, if something, you know, like my kids broke limbs in people's houses, there that's fixable. But if something is really life changing, like what would that be like? And so the bonfire takes place in their neighbor's house, and so all the parents are inside, so it's nobody's actual fault. And then her older brother, Grace's older brother, is there, but he's on his phone. He's raging. He doesn't want to be at this cheap barbecue. He wants to be out with his mates. He's sort of
mm.
15, 16. And so he feels bad because he didn't notice. The parents, her own parents, feel bad, but then the people who had the bonfire feel bad. And, so there's blame. And obviously then they get very defensive because they're kind of going, well, you know, that was your child. If you want to look after your own child, you were inside, drinking wine as well. So it's just, I
Mm,
think it's really interesting and how that happens. And in a way, I think when something bad happens, you want to lash out and blame someone. As a parent, you
yes.
kind of almost want it not to be your fault, and it's actually nobody's fault. It's just an accident. But I think when you see your child in such distress and in so much pain, I think you kind of nearly want to lash out at somebody. So I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting. And I also think it's really interesting how when parents fall out, it affects the kids. So they're all really still friendly with each other, but they're affected by that.
Yeah.
And that, because at the end of the day, you're always going to defend your own parents. So that's something really interesting to explore as well. Because, she kind of goes, well, it was your parents' fault. And like Ryan said, well, your parents were at the bonfire too. Like it's just all those kind of different things.
Yeah.
Everyone has a different angle, and then you kind of have the parents who were neither involved nor burned, who are trying to be peacemakers, but they're not getting any joy either.
And they're all hurting. They're all hurting.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And
yeah,
interesting, interesting. Well, this sounds like a perfect summer read if you have a child that age. Just talk. So this one is called Saving Grace, but for anyone that
yeah,
hasn't heard of your books before, The New Girl is the one about the Syrian refugee.
yeah. The
You've
truth
got,
about Riley is about a
yes.
little girl and her mom who become homeless temporarily and have to live in the car, and it's just about how you never know what's going on in someone's life.
Mm,
And then Finding Hope. Hope's mum dies, and she's got a big hole in her life, and she's really sad, and she fills it. She becomes obsessed with climate change and Greta Thunberg, and that becomes her obsession because she's filling the hole and the void in her life. And then lots of different things happen to her. And then Fixing Mum and Dad is about a girl who's trying to fix her mum and dad, and it's just about how sometimes what you want to happen isn't actually the best thing to happen, and that maybe people are happier when they're not together. And that's just about how sometimes, the thing you dread is actually the best thing for everyone. So it's all
yeah.
all those kind of, important themes, but done in a very sweet, kind of, digestible way. And always, always end with hope.
Love that. Absolutely love that. And I think how lovely that there are books. We often talk about books as a way of managing tricky situations on this podcast, that sometimes if you don't have the words as a parent, that a book is helpful. So there are 5 themes there that might help somebody tackle some tricky topics in their household. So thank you for that.
Pleasure.
Really lovely to talk to you, Sinead. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks so much.
Quick thank you to all of you for listening this season, for all your lovely messages and feedback. Anytime I see any of you in real life, everyone's really complimentary. If there's any guests you'd love to see or any topic you would love tackled, it's tricky to say, you can email me, themummind@gmail.com. Have a lovely summer and we'll see you in September.